I'm Ethan Mitchell, 34 years old, and last year I lost my fiancée Rebecca in a car accident 2 months before our wedding. The only physical connection I had left was the $590,000 custom engagement ring we designed together, her final creation as a jewelry designer. When I discovered my parents had stolen and sold it to fund my sister's luxury, healing retreat, in Bali, something inside me broke. They didn't just sell a ring, they sold the last piece of the woman I loved. If you've ever felt betrayed by those who should protect you most, stay with me. Drop a like, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe to join me on this journey of heartbreak and justice. I met Rebecca Winters at a charity auction for urban development projects 5 years ago. I was there representing my architecture firm, and she was showcasing some of her jewelry designs to support the cause. Our connection was immediate, one of those rare moments when you meet someone and just know they're going to be important in your life. Rebecca was brilliant. Her jewelry designs had this unique quality of capturing emotion through metals and stones. She could look at someone and somehow create a piece that reflected their personality perfectly. During our 3 years together, we built a life that felt like something out of a dream. We bought a loft in the city that we were renovating together, merging her studio with my home office. We planned weekend getaways to national parks and talked about the 3 kids we wanted to have someday. Our wedding was supposed to be small but meaningful. Just 80 guests at a mountain lodge that overlooked the valley where we had our first hiking trip. Then came that rainy Tuesday night in April. Rebecca was driving back from visiting a client when a truck lost control on the highway. The police said she died instantly, which was the only mercy in an otherwise merciless situation. I remember standing in the morgue, looking at her body, unable to comprehend that the vibrant, creative force I loved was gone. The ring was special beyond its monetary value. Most people hear $590,000 and think it's about showing off wealth, but that wasn't it at all. Rebecca had made a name for herself designing unique engagement rings, and she poured her heart into creating ours. We spent months sourcing the perfect 5-carat oval diamond, and she incorporated elements that symbolized our relationship. Tiny sapphires from the lake where we first said, "I love you." Rose gold because she loved the way it complemented the sunset. The band had an intricate pattern that, when viewed at certain angles, revealed our initials intertwined. It was her final masterpiece. After the funeral, I fell into a dark place. I took a leave of absence from work and barely left our loft for weeks. My parents, Harold and Janet Mitchell, initially came to stay with me. They cooked meals I didn't eat and cleaned rooms I didn't use. I appreciated their efforts, but after 3 weeks, I could sense their growing impatience. "Don't you think it's time to start moving forward?" my father asked one evening. He meant well but had always been the practical type. Emotions were inconvenient distractions from productivity in his world. My mother was slightly more tactful but equally persistent. "Rebecca wouldn't want you wasting away like this, Ethan," she'd say, as if she could speak for what Rebecca would want. Eventually, they returned to their home in the suburbs, and our interactions became limited to concerned phone calls and occasional dinner invitations that I mostly declined. My younger sister Megan was a different story. At 27, she had never held a steady job or relationship. Our parents had funded her journeys of self-discovery. For years, art school in Paris, dropped out after a semester, yoga teacher training in India, completed but never taught a class, a culinary program in Italy, abandoned to pursue her true calling as a DJ. Despite all this, she remained the favorite child, the one whose dreams were always worth investing in. 2 months ago, I needed to store the ring somewhere safe while contractors were working on our loft, my loft now. The building had experienced a couple of break-ins, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing that final connection to Rebecca. I decided to keep it in my parents' home safe temporarily. When I arrived at their suburban home with the ring box, they welcomed me warmly. It was the first time I'd visited since Rebecca's death. "You look better," my mother said, though her eyes suggested otherwise. My father patted me awkwardly on the shoulder. "Good to have you here, son. How's work?" "I'm easing back in," I replied, not mentioning that I was still only working part-time and struggling to focus on projects. They showed me to the office where their wall safe was hidden behind a mediocre landscape painting. I placed the velvet box inside myself, watched my father spin the dial, and felt a small sense of relief knowing the ring was secure. That night, we had dinner together. The conversation was strained but cordial. They avoided mentioning Rebecca directly but asked about my future plans in ways that suggested they thought it was time for me to move on. Megan wasn't there. Apparently, she was finding herself again, this time at some wellness center in Arizona. "Your sister is really making progress," my mother said, her eyes lighting up. "The energy healer she's working with says she has exceptional spiritual potential." I nodded and changed the subject. Before I left the next morning, my father assured me the ring would be safe. "No one knows about this safe except family," he said. "And you can come get it any time. You have your key to the house." I thanked them and drove back to the city, unaware that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. 3 weeks later, the contractors finished the major renovation work on my loft. With the dust settled and strangers no longer coming in and out daily, I decided it was time to bring Rebecca's ring home where it belonged. I kept it on my nightstand in those days, a reminder when I went to sleep and when I woke up that what we had was real, even if it was now only a memory. I drove to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. I hadn't called ahead, but my car was in their driveway when I pulled up, so I knew they were home. I used my key and called out as I entered. "Mom? Dad? It's Ethan." My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Something in her expression immediately set off alarm bells, a mix of surprise and what I can only describe as guilt. "Ethan! We weren't expecting you today. I mentioned I'd be coming back for the ring once the renovations were done," I replied, already feeling uneasy. "Your father's in his study. Why don't you have some coffee first? I just made a fresh pot." That was when I knew something was wrong. My mother never delayed difficult conversations, she faced them head on. Her suggestion that we have coffee first was completely out of character. "I'll just grab the ring and then I'd love some coffee," I said, moving toward my father's study. My father was sitting at his desk when I entered, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed some document. He looked up, and I saw the same expression that had been on my mother's face. "Ethan, good to see you." He stood up, blocking my path to the painting that concealed the safe. "What brings you by unannounced?" The contractors finished. "I'm here for Rebecca's ring." A heavy silence filled the room. My father took off his glasses slowly, folding them with deliberate care. "We should discuss that in the living room," he said. My stomach dropped. "What's there to discuss?" "I left it in your safe. I'm here to pick it up." My mother appeared in the doorway. "Harold, we need to tell him." My father nodded grimly and gestured toward the living room. Like a condemned man walking to his execution, I followed them, a sense of dread building with each step. Once we were seated, my father cleared his throat. "Son, we made a decision that we believe is in everyone's best interest, including yours." "What did you do?" My voice was barely a whisper. "We sold the ring," my mother said, her voice steady but her eyes unable to meet mine. "Megan needed help, and we found a buyer who gave us a fair price." The room seemed to tilt. "You sold Rebecca's ring? Without asking me? Without even telling me? You've been stuck in grief for over a year," my father continued, his tone becoming defensive. "That ring was becoming an unhealthy fixation. And Megan discovered this exclusive healing retreat in Bali that's helping people with deep spiritual wounds. You sold my dead fiancé's ring to send Megan to Bali?" The words felt absurd coming out of my mouth. "It's not just any retreat," my mother interjected quickly. "It's a transformative experience with the world's leading energy healers. It cost $75,000 for the 6-week program, and we simply didn't have the liquidity without making some difficult choices." "So you chose to steal from me?" I stood up, my legs shaking. "We didn't steal anything," my father said firmly. That ring was just making your grief worse. Rebecca would have wanted to help Megan heal. You know how generous she was. The audacity of him invoking Rebecca's name to justify their betrayal nearly broke me. Don't you dare tell me what Rebecca would have wanted. That ring wasn't yours to sell. Ethan, be reasonable, my mother said. Megan has been struggling with her purpose for years. This retreat is already making a difference. She's finding her true path. While wearing my $590,000 ring? I asked bitterly. My parents exchanged a look. No, of course not, my father said. The money went to the retreat center. Megan left 3 days ago. Something wasn't adding up. You said you sold it while it was in your safe. But I've been renovating for 3 weeks, and I put it in your safe before that. Another uncomfortable silence. We took it from your apartment, my mother finally admitted. We used your spare key. We were worried about you, wanted to check on you, and then your father thought it would be easier this way. The betrayal deepened. They hadn't just sold the ring, they had entered my home without permission and taken it. What they had done wasn't just morally reprehensible, it was legally theft. I could have screamed. I could have broken everything in that pristine living room. Instead, I felt an eerie calm settle over me. Who did you sell it to? I asked. A jewelry dealer named Maxwell Curtis, my father replied, seemingly relieved by my controlled response. He gave us $510,000 for it. We have the paperwork if you. Keep the paperwork, I said, standing up. You'll need it. Ethan, where are you going? We should talk about this as a family. My mother called as I walked toward the door. I turned back one last time. We're not a family anymore. Not after this. I walked out of their house, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't speed or play loud music or scream. I just drove, the quiet determination of my next steps already forming in my mind. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur. Traffic lights changed, cars moved around me, but I felt disconnected from all of it. By the time I reached my building, the shock had started to wear off, leaving a raw, aching void. Inside my apartment, memories of Rebecca seemed to intensify. The kitchen island where she would sketch designs while I cooked dinner. The window seat where she would curl up with coffee on Sunday mornings. The bedroom where her pillow no longer smelled like her perfume, but I kept it unwashed anyway. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and finally let the tears come. Not just for the ring, but for the casual cruelty with which my parents had dismissed both its significance and my grief. I cried for Rebecca, who had poured her talent and love into creating something beautiful that was now lost. And I cried for myself, for the double betrayal of losing her and then losing the last physical connection we had created together. When the tears subsided, a cold, clear focus took their place. The architect in me emerged, the problem solver, the planner, the man who could envision the necessary steps to reach a desired outcome. First, I needed information. I went to my computer and searched for Maxwell Curtis. He owned a high-end jewelry store downtown that specialized in estate pieces and custom designs. His website showcased his expertise in evaluating and resetting significant stones. There was a phone number and an email address for appointments only. I called immediately, identifying myself as a potential seller with a large diamond. The receptionist put me through to Curtis himself. Mr. Curtis, I understand you recently purchased a 5-carat oval diamond set in a custom rose gold setting, I said without preamble. A pause. I'm afraid I don't discuss client transactions, Mr. Mitchell. Ethan Mitchell. The ring was stolen from me and sold to you by Harold and Janet Mitchell. It belonged to my late fiancée. Another longer pause. Mr. Mitchell, that's a serious allegation. The sellers provided proof of ownership. What proof could they possibly have provided for a custom ring designed by Rebecca Winters for our engagement? I can't discuss this further over the phone. If you believe a crime has been committed, I suggest you contact the police. I will, I assured him. And I'll be contacting my attorney as well. but I wanted to give you the opportunity to do the right thing first. I'm afraid I've already sold the main stone," he replied, his voice more guarded now. The setting was melted down for other pieces. The news hit me like a physical blow. Not only was the ring gone, but it had been dismantled, its unique design destroyed forever. "Who purchased the diamond?" I demanded. "That's confidential information, Mr. Mitchell. I'm going to end this call now. Please have your attorney contact me directly if you wish to pursue this matter." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in silence for several minutes, processing this new information. The ring was gone, truly gone. The setting Rebecca had labored over had been destroyed. The main stone was now in someone else's possession. My next call was to Brian Cooper, a friend from college who had become a successful attorney. We hadn't spoken much since Rebecca's death, my fault, not his, but he answered on the second ring. "Ethan? Man, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" I gave him a condensed version of what had happened, my voice surprisingly steady as I recounted the theft, the sale, and my conversation with Curtis. "Jesus," Brian said when I finished. I don't even have words. What I need are options," I replied. "Legally, where do I stand?" "Well, technically what they did constitutes theft," he said, slipping into his professional tone. "They entered your residence without permission and took property valued over $500,000. That's grand larceny, potentially a felony depending on how the DA would want to charge it." "And Curtis? If you can prove he knew or should have known the item was stolen, he could be charged as a receiver of stolen property. But that's harder to establish. He'll claim he performed due diligence. What would happen to my parents if I press charges?" Brian hesitated. "Ethan, are you sure you want to go down that road? We're talking about potential jail time, especially with the value involved." The question hung in the air. Did I want my parents to go to jail? Despite everything, the answer wasn't an immediate yes. But I also couldn't let them get away with what they'd done. "I need time to think," I said finally. "But I want to preserve my options." "What should I do next?" "Document everything," Brian advised. "Write down exactly what happened, when it happened, and what was said. Forward me the communications you've had with the jeweler. If you have any documentation of the ring's value and provenance, gather that too." "And Megan? She's benefiting from stolen property. That's murkier territory. If she knew the ring was taken without permission, she could potentially be charged as an accessory after the fact." "But again, Ethan, we're talking about your family here. They stopped being family when they stole Rebecca's ring," I said, but even to my own ears, the words lacked conviction. After ending the call with Brian, I sat down and documented everything as he had suggested. Then I pulled out my credit card statements from the past month. If my parents had used my spare key to enter my apartment, I needed to know when. Sure enough, there was an Uber charge from my parents' address to my building and back 3 weeks ago, the day after I had stored the ring in their safe. They hadn't waited at all. I took a leave of absence from work, citing family emergency. My boss was understanding. He had been exceptionally supportive since Rebecca's death and didn't ask questions. That night, I made 2 decisions. First, I would not file a police report immediately. Despite everything, the thought of my parents in handcuffs made me physically ill. Second, I would find out exactly what happened to the ring, even if that meant following Megan to Bali. I booked a flight for the following week, prepared a cover story about needing space to heal, and began researching the retreat where Megan was supposedly finding her spiritual purpose with my money. The Serenity Lotus Healing Center was located in Ubud, Bali, and marketed itself as an exclusive transformative experience for spiritually gifted individuals seeking their highest purpose. Their website featured smiling, attractive people in white linen clothes doing yoga at sunrise, meditating under banyan trees, and being pampered with flower petal baths. The cost, $75,000 for 6 weeks. Included private villa accommodation, all meals prepared by intuitive chefs, daily yoga and meditation, energy alignment sessions, and manifestation workshops. It was exactly the kind of pseudo-spiritual luxury experience Megan had been chasing for years, each more expensive than the last. Only this time, she was doing it with the proceeds from my stolen engagement ring. Before leaving, I withdrew from the investment account I shared with my parents, a fund they had set up when I was born and that we had both contributed to over the years. I didn't take everything, just my documented contributions plus reasonable interest. It came to about $212,000. I transferred it to a new account they couldn't access. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Brian. I simply packed a suitcase, locked up my apartment, and prepared to disappear, just as my ring had disappeared. The difference was, I planned to come back with answers. The flight to Bali took nearly 24 hours with layovers. I used the time to refine my approach, knowing that confronting Megan directly might cause her to alert our parents, or retreat further into denial. Instead, I needed to understand the full picture before making my move. Denpasar Airport was humid and crowded. I collected my luggage and found the driver I'd arranged to take me to Ubud, about an hour north of the airport. The scenery was stunning, terraced rice fields, tropical forests, ancient temples, but I barely registered it, my mind focused on what lay ahead. I had booked a modest hotel about half a mile from the Serenity Lotus Healing Center. After checking in and showering off the travel grime, I reviewed their website again. Fortunately, they offered introductory experiences for prospective clients, a chance to tour the facility and sample some of their services before committing to the full program. I scheduled one for the following morning. That night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through various scenarios of confronting Megan, recovering the ring, or at least understanding why she had participated in this betrayal. By dawn, I was already awake, watching the sunrise from my balcony and preparing myself mentally for the day ahead. The Serenity Lotus Healing Center was even more extravagant than its website suggested. Set on 10 acres of manicured tropical gardens, the main building was a massive open-air structure with soaring teak columns and intricate Balinese carvings. Water features flowed throughout the property, creating a constant, soothing background soundtrack. Staff members dressed in flowing white moved silently, offering fresh coconut water and cool towels infused with lemongrass. I was greeted by a serene woman named Indra who would be my guide for the introductory experience. "We're so pleased you're considering our transformative journey," she said, leading me through the main building. "What brings you to seek healing with us?" I had prepared for this. "I lost someone important to me," I said, which was true enough. "I've been struggling to find purpose since then." Indra nodded sympathetically. "Many of our guests come to us after profound loss. Our founder, Master Surya, believes that loss creates openings for new spiritual awareness." She showed me the meditation pavilions, the yoga studios, the energy alignment chambers, which looked suspiciously like standard massage rooms with crystal decorations, and the dining area where, vibrationally optimized, meals were served. Everything was beautiful, peaceful, and wildly overpriced. "Do you have many American guests currently?" I asked casually as we toured the private villa area. "Oh yes, quite a few," Indra replied. "Americans are very open to spiritual growth." She pointed to a villa with purple bougainvillea climbing its walls. "That one belongs to a lovely young woman from the States who's making remarkable progress. She had significant energy blockages when she arrived, but Master Surya says she has exceptional potential." I felt my heart rate increase. Could that be Megan's villa? "Is there a community aspect to the program?" I asked. "Opportunities to connect with other guests?" "Absolutely. We have communal dinners 3 times a week, and group meditation every morning at sunrise. Many guests form deep connections here." "Perfect. That would give me opportunities to locate Megan without drawing attention." I thanked Indra for the tour and signed up for a 3-day introductory package that would allow me access to the communal activities. It cost $3,000, which felt like throwing good money after bad, but it was necessary for my plan. That evening, I attended my first communal dinner. About 20 guests were seated at a long table in a garden pavilion, the space lit by hundreds of candles. I scanned the faces anxiously but didn't see Megan. Just as I was beginning to think she might not attend, she walked in, laughing with a tall, tan man with dreadlocks. My sister looked different. Her normally blonde hair had been dyed a soft brown and hung in loose waves past her shoulders. She wore a flowing dress in some kind of natural fabric and multiple beaded bracelets on her wrists. She looked happy, carefree, and completely unburdened by the fact that her luxury spiritual journey had been funded by stealing a dead woman's engagement ring. I kept my head down, grateful that the lighting was dim and that Megan had never been particularly observant. I chose a seat at the opposite end of the table and listened to the conversations around me, mostly wealthy people discussing their journeys and awakenings in vague, self-important terms. After dinner, I returned to my hotel and opened my laptop. I had another angle to pursue. I searched for Megan on social media and found that she had been posting regularly about her transformation at the retreat. Her Instagram was filled with carefully posed photos of her meditating by waterfalls, receiving flower baths, and attending what appeared to be one-on-one sessions with Master Surya, a middle-aged man with a carefully maintained salt and pepper beard who wore more jewelry than seemed appropriate for a spiritual leader. One post in particular caught my attention. Posted 3 weeks ago, it showed Megan on what appeared to be a private jet with the caption, "When the universe provides exactly what you need exactly when you need it. So grateful for my amazing parents who always support my journey. #blessed, #abundance, #manifestation." The timestamp corresponded precisely with when my parents would have received the money from selling Rebecca's ring. The universe hadn't provided anything. My stolen engagement ring had. For the next 2 days, I observed Megan from a distance, attending group meditations and meals without directly approaching her. I learned from conversations with other guests that she had arrived 3 weeks ago and was staying for the full 6-week program, with the possibility of extending for their Advanced Manifestation Intensive. On the 3rd day, I got my opportunity. I saw Megan heading alone toward one of the private meditation pavilions in a secluded part of the property. Making sure no one was watching, I followed, keeping a discreet distance until she entered the small, open-sided structure. I waited a few minutes, then approached. She was sitting cross-legged on a cushion, eyes closed, apparently in deep meditation. I stood at the entrance, watching her perform this peaceful charade while my insides churned with anger and hurt. "Hello, Megan," I said quietly. Her eyes flew open, and for a moment, naked shock registered on her face before she composed herself. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" She uncrossed her legs and stood up quickly. I came to understand why my sister would be complicit in stealing from me. I replied, keeping my voice even. She glanced around, perhaps looking for an escape route or checking if anyone could overhear. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The ring, Megan. Rebecca's ring. Mom and Dad told me everything." Her expression hardened, the peaceful spiritual seeker replaced by the sister I knew, defensive, entitled, and ultimately selfish. "That ring was making you sick," she said. "You were obsessed with it, with her. It wasn't healthy. That wasn't for you to decide. Someone had to do something. You've been walking around like a ghost for a year." I took a deep breath. "So your solution was to steal my property and use it to fund this?" I gestured to our surroundings. "I'm finding my purpose here," she insisted. "Master Surya says I have gifts that need to be nurtured. This isn't just some vacation. It's a $75,000 luxury retreat paid for with a stolen ring, Megan. Do you have any idea what that ring meant to me?" Something flashed across her face, not guilt, but something darker. "I knew exactly what it meant to you. That was the problem." The admission stunned me. "You knew and you took it anyway?" "Mom and Dad asked if I wanted the cash equivalent or the retreat. I chose the retreat." She lifted her chin defiantly. "At least something good is coming from that ridiculous ring." "That ridiculous ring was designed by Rebecca." It was the last thing she created before she died. Everything was always about Rebecca. Megan suddenly exploded. Rebecca's so talented, Rebecca's so special, Rebecca and Ethan are so perfect together. Even after she died, it was all about your grief, your loss, your pain. I stared at her, unable to comprehend the depth of her resentment. You've always had everything handed to you, Ethan, she continued bitterly. The successful career, the perfect relationship, Mom and Dad's approval. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Being the screw-up while you're the golden child? So this was revenge? I asked incredulously. She scoffed. This was the universe balancing things out. Master Surya says that when something is taken from you, it's because you weren't meant to have it in the first place. Rebecca's death was the universe correcting an imbalance. The cruelty of her words left me speechless. This was my sister, my own blood, suggesting that Rebecca's death was somehow cosmically justified to balance out some perceived unfairness in our family dynamics. I reached into my pocket and pressed record on my phone's voice recorder app. Say that again, I said quietly. Tell me again how Rebecca deserved to die to balance the universe. Megan rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. I'm just saying that everything happens for a reason. Your perfect life needed some adjustment, and now my life needs to move forward. The ring is gone, Ethan. It's been melted down and sold. You can't get it back, so you might as well accept it and move on. Do Mom and Dad know how you really feel? That you think Rebecca's death was justified? They know I needed this opportunity more than you needed that ring. She replied dismissively. They've always protected me, and they always will. I stopped the recording and put my phone back in my pocket. Thank you for your honesty, Megan. I needed to hear it. She looked confused by my suddenly calm demeanor. So you understand now? Perfectly, I replied. Enjoy the rest of your retreat. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the pavilion. I had what I needed, not just the recording, but the clarity that comes from finally seeing the truth, no matter how ugly. I checked out of the retreat and my hotel that afternoon and booked the next flight home. The rage I had felt initially had crystallized into something colder and more focused. My parents and sister had shown me exactly who they were and what they valued. Now it was time to show them who I had become. The long flight home gave me time to formulate a plan. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted justice and, if possible, recovery of at least some part of what was taken from me. The recording of Megan's callous words was powerful, but it wasn't enough on its own. My first stop after landing was Brian's law office. He looked surprised to see me walk in unannounced but quickly cleared his schedule for an impromptu meeting. You disappeared, he said, ushering me into his office. I tried calling you several times. I went to Bali, I replied, setting my phone on his desk. I needed to understand why Megan was complicit in this. Brian's eyebrows shot up. You went to Bali? To confront her? To get answers. Listen to this. I played the recording of my conversation with Megan. Brian's expression darkened as he listened to her callous words about Rebecca and her unrepentant attitude about the theft. When it finished, he sat back in his chair. Jesus, Ethan. I'm sorry. I need to know my legal options now. All of them. Brian nodded, shifting into lawyer mode. The recording strengthens your case significantly. It establishes that Megan knew the ring was taken without your consent and that she was a willing participant in the theft. He leaned forward. But I need to ask again, are you sure you want to pursue legal action against your family? They're not acting like family, I replied. But no, I don't want my parents in jail if it can be avoided. What I want is to recover the diamond from Rebecca's ring and to make sure they understand the consequences of what they've done. Okay, Brian said thoughtfully. We have several options. We could file a civil suit for the value of the ring, which would be easier to win than a criminal case, especially with this recording. Or we could present them with the evidence and try to negotiate a settlement, essentially give them a chance to make this right before we escalate. And Maxwell Curtis? The jeweler? We could potentially include him in the lawsuit as a receiver of stolen property, though he'll claim he performed due diligence. The fact that your parents couldn't have provided legitimate proof of ownership works in our favor. I nodded, considering our options. I want to try something first. Curtis told me he sold the diamond to someone else. I need to track down the buyer. That might be difficult without a court order for Curtis's records. I'll handle Curtis, I said. Can you prepare the paperwork for both scenarios, the civil suit and criminal charges, but hold off on filing anything until I give you the word? Brian agreed, and I left his office with a clear next step. I needed to approach Maxwell Curtis again, this time in person. Curtis Jewelry Designs was located in an upscale shopping district downtown. The store was elegant but understated, with tasteful displays and subtle security. I walked in wearing my best suit, projecting the confidence of someone with money to spend. A saleswoman approached me with a practiced smile. Welcome to Curtis Designs. How may I assist you today? I need to speak with Maxwell Curtis directly, I replied. It's regarding a significant acquisition. She hesitated. Mr. Curtis typically sees clients by appointment only. May I schedule something for you later this week? I handed her my business card. Please tell him Ethan Mitchell is here about a 5-carat oval diamond he acquired last month. I'll wait. Her eyes widened slightly at the reference to a specific stone, and she disappeared into a back office. A few minutes later, Maxwell Curtis himself emerged, a well-dressed man in his 50s with meticulously groomed silver hair and calculating eyes. Mr. Mitchell, he said, extending his hand. I believe we spoke on the phone. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office. I followed him to a tastefully appointed private office with framed certifications on the walls and a display case of particularly impressive stones. I'll be direct, I said once the door closed. The ring you purchased was stolen from me by my parents. I have legal documentation proving it was my property, and I've consulted with my attorney about pressing charges, not just against my parents, but against you as a receiver of stolen property. Curtis's expression remained carefully neutral. As I told you on the phone, I performed standard due diligence. Your parents provided identification and signed an affidavit of ownership. An affidavit for a custom-designed engagement ring created by my late fiancée? What documentation could they possibly have provided that would prove legitimate ownership? A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. They explained that the ring had been a family heirloom repurposed for your engagement. They claimed they were the original owners and had merely loaned it for your use. And you believe that story? A 5-carat diamond in a modern custom setting described as a family heirloom? Curtis shifted in his seat. Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're upset, but threatening me won't recover your ring. As I told you, the setting was melted down, and the main stone has been sold. To whom? That's confidential client information. I leaned forward. Let me be very clear. I have 2 options prepared with my attorney. The first is a civil suit against you and my parents for the full value of the ring plus damages. The second is to go to the police with evidence of grand larceny and receiving stolen property. Neither of those options is ideal for your reputation or business. Curtis stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Mitchell? The name of the buyer and your help in approaching them about the diamond's history. I'm not looking to disrupt their lives or take legal action against them. I simply want an opportunity to recover what was stolen from me, or at least to know what happened to it. After another long pause, Curtis opened a drawer and pulled out a file. The diamond was purchased by Theodore Harrison. He's a real estate developer and a regular client who was looking for a significant stone for his wife's anniversary present. He had it reset in a pendant. The name struck a chord. Theodore Harrison of Harrison Properties? Curtis nodded. Yes. Do you know him? I didn't, but I knew of him. Harrison was prominent in the same social circles as my parents, country club members, charity gala attendees, the wealthy elite of our city. It was entirely possible my parents had connections to him, which might explain how this transaction happened so quickly. When did he purchase the stone? About 3 weeks ago. It was reset and delivered to him last week. I stood up. Thank you for the information. I appreciate your cooperation. Curtis looked relieved that I wasn't pursuing legal action against him immediately. Mr. Mitchell, for what it's worth, I am truly sorry about your situation. Had I known the true circumstances. I nodded but didn't absolve him. His regret now didn't change his failure to perform proper due diligence. Back at my apartment, I researched Theodore Harrison extensively. He was 62, had built his fortune in commercial real estate development, and was married to Eleanor Harrison, his second wife, who was 15 years his junior. They were fixtures on the charity circuit and had a reputation for philanthropy, particularly arts organizations and children's hospitals. As luck would have it, the Harrisons were hosting a charity gala for the City Symphony in 2 weeks. It would be the perfect opportunity to approach him about the diamond, a public setting where he would be inclined to maintain his philanthropic image. I secured an invitation through a colleague at my architecture firm who served on the symphony board. I also continued building my case against my parents, gathering all documentation related to the ring, the custom design sketches, the GIA certification for the diamond, photographs of Rebecca wearing it, even our homeowner's insurance that listed it specifically as a high-value item. During this time, my parents called repeatedly. I let their calls go to voicemail. The messages started with concern about my disappearance, then shifted to defensive justifications of their actions, and finally to angry demands that I stop acting childish and discuss the situation like adults. I saved each message as further evidence of their state of mind. I also took steps to secure my financial independence from them. I closed all remaining joint accounts, transferred my portion of family investments to separate accounts, and removed them as beneficiaries from my life insurance and retirement plans. I wasn't being vindictive. I was establishing clear boundaries that they had proven were necessary. The night of the gala arrived. I dressed carefully in a tuxedo that Rebecca had helped me select for our engagement party. It felt appropriate somehow, like bringing a piece of her with me on this mission to recover what remained of our ring. The event was held at the city's most prestigious hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, a string quartet played in the corner, and waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The city's elite mingled and preened, exchanging air kisses and business cards in equal measure. I spotted Theodore Harrison quickly, a distinguished-looking man with a commanding presence, surrounded by a small group hanging on his every word. Beside him stood a slender woman with expertly colored blonde hair and an elegant black dress. Around her neck was a diamond pendant that caught the light with every movement. Rebecca's diamond. Even from across the room, I recognized its distinctive fire and brilliance. I bided my time, observing their interactions and waiting for an opportunity to approach. It came during the cocktail hour when Harrison momentarily stepped away from his wife to speak with the symphony director. I approached him with a practiced ease that belied my churning emotions. "Mr. Harrison? Ethan Mitchell. I'm with ARG Architecture. Your Westlake development was brilliant work." Harrison shook my hand firmly, pleased by the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Are you working with the symphony?" "Just a supporter," I replied. "Actually, I was hoping to speak with you about something rather personal. It concerns a diamond you purchased recently from Maxwell Curtis." His expression shifted subtly. "Oh? Are you in the jewelry business as well?" "No, sir. The diamond your wife is wearing tonight, the oval in her pendant, it was originally part of my fiancée's engagement ring. It was stolen from my apartment and sold without my knowledge or consent." Harrison's face darkened. "That's a very serious accusation." "It's not an accusation against you," I clarified quickly. "I have no reason to believe you knew its provenance. But I can prove it was stolen, and I wanted to approach you directly, one gentleman to another, rather than involving the authorities immediately." Harrison studied me for a long moment. Let's step outside for a moment, Mr. Mitchell. This isn't a conversation for public ears. We moved to a quiet terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. Once we were alone, Harrison's demeanor changed from cautious to concerned. Tell me exactly what happened, he said. I gave him the condensed version: Rebecca's death, the custom ring, my parents' theft, and Megan's retreat. I showed him photographs of the original ring on Rebecca's hand and the GIA certificate with the diamond's unique identification number. When I finished, Harrison was silent for several moments. I know your parents, he finally said. Not well, but we've moved in the same circles for years. I never would have expected this from them. Neither would I admitted. And Curtis never mentioned any unusual circumstances about the stone? He presented it as an estate piece he had acquired. Eleanor fell in love with it immediately. Harrison sighed heavily. Mr. Mitchell, I believe you. And I find myself in an extremely uncomfortable position. I understand that, sir. I'm not asking you to return it immediately, especially not tonight. That would create an impossible situation for Mrs. Harrison. I simply wanted you to know the truth and to see if we might find a resolution that respects everyone involved. Harrison nodded, seemingly appreciative of my approach. Let me speak with Eleanor privately. This will come as a shock to her as well. Can I contact you in a few days to discuss how we might proceed? I handed him my card. Of course. I appreciate your willingness to listen. As I turned to leave, Harrison called after me. Mr. Mitchell? I'm truly sorry about your fiancée. That's a loss no one should have to bear. I nodded my thanks, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in my throat. I left the gala shortly afterward, having accomplished my objective. Theodore Harrison now knew the truth, and he struck me as a man who valued his reputation and doing the right thing. It wasn't a resolution yet, but it was progress. The next step was to confront my parents directly. I scheduled a meeting with Brian to review our strategy, then called my father and suggested dinner at their house the following week. I kept my tone neutral, giving no indication of what I planned. We've been worried sick about you, my father said, sounding genuinely relieved. Where have you been? I needed some time to process everything, I replied vaguely. I'll explain when I see you. Does Thursday at 7 work? He agreed eagerly, promising to tell my mother. I hung up feeling a complex mix of emotions, anger still, yes, but also a deep sadness for what our relationship had become, and what it might never be again. The pieces were falling into place. Now I just needed to prepare for the most difficult confrontation of all. The day of the dinner with my parents arrived with a strange sense of inevitability. I had prepared extensively with Brian, reviewing both the legal documentation and my approach to the conversation. We had agreed that I would record the interaction to protect myself, but would give my parents an opportunity to make amends before pursuing legal action. I arrived at their suburban home at exactly 7 o'clock. My mother opened the door, her face a mixture of relief and apprehension. Ethan, she said, moving to embrace me. I stepped back slightly, maintaining physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. Let's go inside, I said quietly. My father was waiting in the living room, standing awkwardly by the fireplace. The house smelled of my mother's pot roast, my favorite meal growing up, obviously prepared as an olive branch. Son, my father said, extending his hand. I shook it briefly, noting the uncertainty in his eyes. We're glad you came. Where have you been? My mother asked, gesturing for me to sit. We've been calling for weeks. I went to Bali, I replied, taking a seat across from them. I wanted to speak with Megan directly. Their faces registered shock, then concern. You went all the way to Bali? My father asked incredulously. That was unnecessary. We could have arranged a call. I needed to look her in the eye when she explained why she thought it was acceptable to benefit from stealing something so personal from me. My mother's lips thinned. Ethan, we've been over this. The ring was becoming unhealthy for you. You were using it as a crutch, refusing to move forward. That wasn't your decision to make, I replied evenly. But I didn't come here to rehash those arguments. I came because you should know what's happening. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. First, I want you to hear something. I played the recording of my conversation with Megan. My parents' expressions shifted from defensive to horrified as they heard their daughter's callous words about Rebecca's death being the universe correcting an imbalance. When it finished, my mother had tears in her eyes. She didn't mean that. She couldn't have. She meant every word. I said. Megan resents me, resents what I had with Rebecca, and saw her death as some kind of cosmic justice. And you enabled her by stealing my ring to fund her spiritual journey. My father looked stricken. Ethan, we never thought. Megan told us you were holding on to unhealthy attachments, that the retreat was helping her develop abilities to help others heal. And you believed her because it was convenient. I replied. Because you've always believed her, always prioritized her wants over everyone else's needs, including mine. I took a deep breath, maintaining my composure. I've spoken with Theodore Harrison. Their faces registered fresh shock at the name. Yes, I tracked down the buyer of Rebecca's diamond. He was quite disturbed to learn its true provenance. His wife has been wearing it as a pendant, unaware that it was stolen from a dead woman's engagement ring. We didn't steal. My father began, but I cut him off. You entered my apartment without permission and took property valued at over $500,000. The legal definition of that is theft, Dad. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. I've had my attorney prepare this. It's a police report detailing the theft, complete with documentation of the ring's value and provenance. I haven't filed it yet. My mother began to cry in earnest now. Ethan, please. We're your parents. You can't seriously be considering pressing charges against us. I'm considering all my options, I replied calmly, including a civil suit against you for the full value of the ring plus damages, and criminal charges for grand larceny. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. This is outrageous. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? When Rebecca died, you gave me 3 weeks of support before deciding I should move on. When I trusted you with the most precious thing I had left of her, you stole it. When I confronted you, you justified it by claiming to know what Rebecca would have wanted. I shook my head. So tell me, what exactly should I be grateful for? He sat back down heavily, the anger deflating like a punctured balloon. We never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. But you did, I replied. Deeply and deliberately. And now you have a choice to make. I placed a second document on the coffee table. This is an agreement that Brian drafted. It states that you acknowledge taking the ring without permission and agree to make financial restitution for its full value. It also includes a commitment to family therapy if we're going to have any relationship moving forward. My parents stared at the document in silence. If you sign this and follow through, I won't file the police report or pursue legal action. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to protect myself and seek justice through the courts. You would really do that to us? My mother whispered. You did this to yourselves. I corrected her. And to me. I'm simply responding to your actions. My father picked up the agreement and began reading it carefully. After a few minutes, he looked up. The financial restitution is the full $590,000 value of the ring. We don't have that kind of liquidity, Ethan. We put most of it into Megan's retreat and some home renovations. Theodore Harrison has offered to return the diamond. I informed them. Curtis has agreed to create a new setting at his cost. The remaining balance can be paid in installments, or you can sell assets to cover it. That's your decision. My mother wiped her tears with a tissue. And if we sign this, you'll forgive us? We can be a family again? Forgiveness takes time, I said honestly. The agreement includes family therapy because we would need professional help to rebuild trust. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm willing to try if you are genuinely remorseful and committed to change. My parents exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations that couples develop over decades together. Finally, my father picked up a pen from the coffee table. "We'll sign," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "And we'll do whatever it takes to make this right, Ethan. I hope someday you can believe that we truly thought we were helping you. By stealing from me?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "By forcing you to let go," my mother said softly. "We watched you suffering for so long, clinging to Rebecca's memory. We thought removing the ring would help you move forward. That wasn't your decision to make," I repeated. "My grief, my healing, those belong to me, not to you. And certainly not to Megan." My father signed the agreement, then passed it to my mother, who added her signature with a shaking hand. "What about Megan?" she asked. "She's still in Bali for another 3 weeks. Megan and I will have our own reckoning when she returns," I said. "But you should know that I've removed both of you and her from my will, insurance policies, and financial accounts. Those boundaries are non-negotiable now." My father nodded soberly. "I understand. Theodore Harrison will contact you directly about returning the diamond," I continued. "And I expect the first installment of the restitution payment by the end of the month, as outlined in the agreement." I stood up, taking the signed document and placing it carefully in my briefcase. "I should go. Won't you stay for dinner?" my mother asked desperately. "I made pot roast." I shook my head. "Not tonight. We've got a long way to go before we're back to family dinners." My father stood as well. "Ethan, despite everything, we do love you. We made a terrible mistake, but please believe that." I looked at them both, these people who had raised me, who had shaped my earliest understanding of right and wrong, and who had betrayed me so fundamentally. "Love without respect isn't love," I said quietly. "It's possession. I hope you'll learn the difference." With that, I left, carrying the signed agreement and a strange mix of emotions: relief that a resolution was underway, sadness for what our family had become, and a tentative hope that perhaps, with time and effort, something better might be built from these ruins. The next day, I called Brian to update him on the outcome. He reviewed the signed agreement and began the process of legally documenting the resolution. I also received a call from Theodore Harrison, who confirmed that he had spoken with my parents and arranged for the return of the diamond. "My wife was horrified when I told her the story," he said. "She insists on returning it personally and offering her apologies, though of course she had no knowledge of its origin." "That's very kind, but unnecessary," I replied. "She's an innocent party in all this. Nevertheless, she feels strongly about it. Perhaps we could meet for lunch next week? I know this has been an ordeal for you, but I believe Eleanor would find some peace in making this right personally." I agreed to the meeting, appreciating the Harrisons' integrity in a situation where they could easily have refused involvement. As for Megan, I decided to let her complete her retreat before confronting her with the consequences of her actions. My parents, following our agreement, cut off additional funding for her spiritual journey, which meant she would return to a very different reality than the one she left. The pieces of my life that had been shattered by betrayal were slowly being gathered up, not to recreate what was lost, but to build something new from the fragments. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was a beginning. 6 months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came tentative new growth in my life. True to his word, Theodore Harrison returned Rebecca's diamond, and Maxwell Curtis crafted a new setting for it, not identical to the original, which would have been impossible to recreate exactly, but one that honored Rebecca's design aesthetic while being distinctly its own creation. The financial restitution from my parents came in regular installments. They had sold their vacation property to cover the majority of the amount, a decision that I knew couldn't have been easy for them but demonstrated a commitment to making amends. We began family therapy with a specialist in betrayal trauma. The sessions were difficult, often painful, as we unpacked decades of family dynamics that had contributed to the situation. My parents' tendency to enable Megan, their dismissal of emotional needs in favor of practical solutions, my own withdrawal after Rebecca's death. All of it was examined under the therapist's careful guidance. Megan's return from Bali was a jarring re-entry to reality. Her retreat had been cut short when the funding stopped, and she arrived home furious and defensive. Our first meeting was a disaster. She accused me of manipulation and cruelty for turning our parents against her. It took weeks before she would even consider joining the family therapy sessions. When she finally did attend, her attitude was sullen and resistant. The therapist skillfully guided her to confront the impact of her actions and words, particularly her statement about Rebecca's death being the universe correcting an imbalance. "I didn't mean it like that," she insisted. "It was something Master Surya taught us about energetic balance. Regardless of where the idea came from," the therapist pointed out gently, "those words caused tremendous pain to your brother. Can you acknowledge that?" It took several more sessions before Megan began to show genuine remorse. The turning point came when my parents, following the therapist's recommendation, stopped funding her lifestyle completely. Faced with actual adult responsibilities for perhaps the first time in her life, Megan experienced a reckoning of her own. "I've been jealous of you for as long as I can remember," she admitted during one particularly intense session. "You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted and how to get it. When you found Rebecca, it was like you'd won at life again, and I was still flailing around trying to find my purpose. I never saw it as a competition," I told her honestly. "Everything feels like a competition when you're losing," she replied, showing more self-awareness than I'd ever witnessed from her before. While family healing was progressing slowly, I found unexpected healing in other areas of my life. I established the Rebecca Winters Foundation for Emerging Jewelry Designers, using part of the restitution money to fund scholarships and mentorship opportunities for young artists. It felt like a way to extend Rebecca's legacy beyond my personal loss, to allow her talent and vision to continue influencing the world. Through the foundation work, I met Lauren Davis, a 33-year-old art therapist who used jewelry making as a healing modality for trauma survivors. She had lost her husband to cancer 3 years earlier and understood grief in a way few others in my life did. "It never really goes away," she told me over coffee after a foundation board meeting. "It just changes shape. Eventually, it becomes something you carry rather than something that crushes you." Lauren and I developed a friendship that was built on mutual understanding and respect. We moved slowly, both aware of the shadows our past losses cast and careful not to rush into something neither of us was ready for. But her presence in my life brought a warmth I hadn't expected to feel again. The ring, now redesigned, no longer sat on my nightstand. Instead, I kept it in a special box in my closet, accessible but not a daily reminder. It remained precious to me, but it had become a symbol of both what I had lost and what I had survived rather than my only connection to Rebecca. My parents and I established a new, more measured relationship. The unquestioning trust was gone, perhaps forever, but in its place grew something potentially stronger, a relationship based on earned respect rather than obligation. They made efforts to understand my boundaries and needs in ways they never had before. Megan and I had the longest road to travel. Her resentment had deep roots, and my forgiveness couldn't be rushed. But we were making progress step by difficult step. She found work at an art gallery and began therapy of her own, separate from our family sessions. Occasionally, she would ask about the foundation, showing genuine interest in Rebecca's work for the first time. 1 year after discovering the theft of the ring, I visited Rebecca's grave. It was a beautiful spring day, the kind she would have loved, warm sunshine, clear blue sky, flowers beginning to bloom. I brought a small bouquet of her favorites and sat on the bench near her headstone. "I brought something to show you," I said aloud, opening the small box that contained the recreated ring. "It's not the same, but Curtis did a good job honoring your design." The diamond caught the sunlight, sending prisms of color dancing across the granite of her headstone. "So much has happened, Becca. I wish I could tell you everything, about the foundation, about the strange journey with my family, about Lauren." I paused, feeling a familiar ache but without the overwhelming grief that had once accompanied it. "I think you would like her," She sees the world the way you did, finding beauty in broken things, possibilities where others see only endings. I sat in silence for a while, feeling Rebecca's absence but also her influence, in who I had become, in the choices I'd made, in my capacity to both stand firm and to forgive. I learned something this year. I continued eventually. Loving someone doesn't mean you own them, or their memory. And grieving someone doesn't mean you stop living. I think I needed to learn both those lessons. As I prepared to leave, I touched the headstone gently. I'll always love you, Becca. That hasn't changed. But I'm learning to carry that love differently now. Walking back to my car, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for too long. The betrayal by my family had forced me to confront not just their failings but my own attachment to grief. In fighting to recover what was taken from me, I had discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed and connections I hadn't been open to before. The ring was back where it belonged, not on Rebecca's finger as we'd planned, but in my care as a treasured memory rather than a shrine. My family was not what it once was, but perhaps evolving into something more honest. And my heart, which had been frozen in grief and then shattered by betrayal, was slowly thawing, making room for new possibilities without forgetting what came before. It wasn't a perfect ending, life rarely offers those. But it was a continuing story, and for the first time in a long time, I was curious to see what the next chapter might bring. What would you do if your family betrayed your trust this deeply? Would you forgive them or cut them off completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found something valuable in my story, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and resilience. Remember that even in our darkest moments, we have more strength than we realize. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to face whatever challenges come your way.